So welcome. My name is Terie. I'm from Istanbul International Community School. And this is about a group of students who are doing their own personalized learning with a little guidance through a course of mathematics, which I'm not going to say too much about because it's not about math. But I have a couple of questions for you to start with. How would you draw a circle with a radius of 30 centimeters without a compass? How could you figure out how many sunflowers it takes to make 2 liters of sunflower oil? And how could you measure a farmer's field? Any idea on how to draw a circle with a radius of 30 centimeters? Yes, ma'am.
You can get a piece of string and a pin and tie it to your pencil and then draw it like
Just one more piece of information. The sheet of paper is self-evident. Maybe it's too rubric. So rip it in half when you're done. Give one. Thank you.
Also.
That is fantastic. And to tell you the truth, I have a class of what some people would call math geniuses, and none of them thought of that. They were making
more evidence that I'm
they
not
were
a math
making it
genius.
so ridiculously difficult. They were constructing a right triangle. They were doing all of these things, and of course, or making a rectangle, and the diameter would have to be 30. They made it so difficult on themselves, and it's really very simple and straightforward. Then, as far as the sunflowers, I'll get to that in a second. But so this is a student came up to me last year to find out how to draw a circle with this kind of radius. The student is a very good math student. Has done well in school, but had no idea how to do this, and that's what started me thinking about, something's not right here. So we can do really well in mathematics, but we can't seem to use it or apply it. And so that's why I got this idea about we need to do something different. So when a group of students came up and we had the opportunity to further their mathematics, we had the choice of either putting them in a higher level course or changing what we do. And the general trend in schools is to put them in a higher level course and just push them along and let them be fabulous mathematicians, which I think is pointless if you really can't see what's going on in the world around you. So this is what our school looks like. Of course, I'm pointing out the window because it's right there, but it's not good. This is what our school looks like in August. This farmer's field is right next to us. And the farmer, at some point last year, was burning his field, not with the sunflowers, but when the sunflowers were gone, and burned our trees along the edge. And I had asked Josh Kimbe, well, does he have to replace those trees? Me being my silly American self. And he's like, are you kidding? He can't afford the sweater on his back. There's no way he can replace those trees. And it got me thinking about, here we are in this school out in the middle of La La Land, and the kids have absolutely no idea, nor do we, about the people that we are touching or are around. So that's what got me started on this mission, so to speak. So there's our field. Here's our field where all the sunflowers are gone, and there's 2 liters of sunflower oil, which you'll see in the market on a regular basis. And I was wondering, okay, this guy grows all those sunflowers. It takes from June until August, and then they send them out, and then how many sunflowers did it take to make that 2-liter bottle of oil, which cost about $5? So these are the questions I started asking my students. And I asked them, how big is this field here? So I have a Twitter account, and I was asking these questions, and I was getting 5 square kilometers, all kinds of crazy answers. Just nothing to do with reality. So then we went out and we measured the field. I took my 11th graders because they need to have some realistic picture about what numbers mean. They were the ones that said this was 5 square kilometers, so we went out and measured it, and it's 3.5 hectares or 3,500 square meters. It's quite small. well, relatively speaking, but they had to walk the whole course. There's actually a student out there, but they walked the whole thing to measure it, and then Mr. Esmail checked it on Google Maps, so that's another way that you can measure it. We also have a sheep farm very close to us. Asked the kids how many sheep are in there. Oh, about 45, 35. And we went later, and when they were shearing the sheep, and they actually had 350 sheep, full-grown sheep, and about another 100, 150 little lambs, which that little boy was holding. So the kids really don't see this on the way to school. It's there. You ask them about it, they have no idea what you're talking about. I think if the windows were open on the buses we drove by, that might change it a little bit. And then when I was on vacation, I saw this. There were a bunch of math kind of questions in the underground in London, and so I took a picture of that one too because I thought it was kind of fun. So math is all around us, and apparently this is some sort of comedy TV show in the UK, but I haven't seen it because I'm not in charge of streaming. My daughter is. Okay. So that's what planted the seed to start this class. And then this summer, a woman was killed in Texas when she fell off the roller coaster as the roller coaster was going. And someone sent me this video about roller coasters. And so this is a condensed version of what the students watched. Oh, gotta look at this one.
Hot Wheels and Loop the Loop. God's on, come on down. There we go. Yes.
Hopefully you've all played with Hot Wheels at some point.
Is can you do that in a real life family sized car?
The in square. Slides my brain a bit now.
So 36 miles an hour is how fast you have to go to do
my
this loop
God.
to loop, which is about 50 kilometers per hour. It's not fast at all.
Wow.
So this was the problem given to the students as to how does this work. So the students spent about a week and a half putting it all together, studying roller coasters, figuring this out, finding out like 36 miles an hour is slow. You would think for certain that he would drop from the top of this thing at 36 miles an hour. But if he goes faster than that, the G-forces will knock him out. And if he goes slower than that, then yes, he'll fall down to the bottom. So they went and they researched and they found this thing called centrifugal force, which does not exist, which they were very upset about because it's a big misconception in physics. So they went and they talked to Miss Holland, they did lots of things, they found out about this thing called I can never say it, clothoid loop, which is not, this is a full circle, but actually a roller coaster is two circles put together and it's much steeper because you can handle, you can go faster without hitting the G-forces because the G-forces are affected by the radius of the circle. So they figured all this out. I didn't figure out any of it. I've just been lucky enough to hear it enough times to remember some of the words. So that's how we started. And then some of the other things they did, they looked at student study habits, the Doppler effect, and activity bus schedule. These are, the four of them worked together on the first one, and then they broke up into twos. Two of them did this, two of them did this, these are the same pair, and two of them did this one. So they looked at those, researched those, and did a presentation on those as well. And here's what they have to say about what they did.
How we started out was that our teacher wanted to track her students' study habit progress, so she had already created out a sort of questionnaire for them, and the answers ranged from always, sometimes, and rarely. And that's how she wanted to have the students take them each semester or each quarter.
And so
Yeah.
by having her handle the words for each questionnaire.
So what I did was I associated each answer with a number, so it always became 3, sometimes became 2, and rarely became 1. So what we did was we took the data from each, I think we took it 3 times. So we compared the data between the second and the first time, and the third and the second time, and we
we took the risk. We wrote the map. Yeah.
You were in profile. For our second project, our topic was software design, and we were given about a week to have a research on it.
What it basically is, the Doppler effect is the change of frequency of waves depending on how much distance there is between the jet and the
So it was a great opportunity for us to learn about something that we weren't really paying attention to before.
I think that's kind of important that they're learning about something they hadn't paid attention to before. And one thing that they have stated themselves is that when they're approaching these things to look at, sometimes they're looking at it from a mathematical concept and finding the reality, or sometimes they're looking at the world and looking for the math concepts outside of that. So exploring math criteria, it's actually supposed to be the oh, never mind. This is the description that's been put together. So that was the beginning, and so now it's been divided up into 4 sections. So they're creating and finding the problems that they want to work with, but we're just providing the framework for them to work from. So in their first big project was a world problem or a global issue, and they had to look at that through a mathematical lens and either refute it, prove it, do something with it from the mathematical lens. The recent thing that they just did was a practice moonshot, and so there's a video here to explain what a moonshot's about, and they did some interesting work with that. Again, they could take something that is in existence and look at it through a mathematical lens and try to put it back together. But they made connections between history, ethics, and some of those things in some of these projects, depending on what they were looking at. Currently, they're looking at my mind, my body from a mathematical perspective. And the last thing that they do will be the final exam, which is they're a moonshot again. So they've done a practice moonshot. This one's entirely up to them. Now, for the criteria as to how this is graded, they came up with the rubrics as to how they're going to grade each other. So they took the criterion A, B, C, and D come from a variety of courses that they've done. They put the presentation aspect into it because in mathematics we don't have a presentation aspect. So they've put those pieces together. When they do a presentation, everyone in the class is part of marking that presentation. So all of that input goes into the final mark on a presentation. Oops. How do I get back?
That's the PowerPoint again.
On the left? Sorry. Oh, thank you. I was afraid it was going to go somewhere else. So the work leading to the moonshots. So here when they were putting together the assessment criteria, there's a lot of good discussion. One of the students really doesn't like doing reflections and wanted to avoid it, but another student did like doing reflections, so that component made it in there. And each time they do a presentation, they decide which of the 4 pieces they're going to use. So we've had our practice moonshot. The water clock, actually you guys haven't seen the water clock. What they did is they put this together. This is a summary of what they did with the water clock. Quite fascinating about water clock built back in the 1600s in Korea. Because people didn't know what time it was for curfew. So they looked at the history and why it was created, and they took it apart piece by piece to show how it works, which involved a lot of physics and mathematical calculations.
Water pressure has to be controlled first.
ever heard of this water club? It's pretty amazing. And then they get into why it has to be a 90-degree angle instead of acute or obtuse.
Where the small group falls out. And it allows the big marble to roll up.
This was cool too. This is what the ratio should be, 2.2 to 4.5, but they used a larger ratio and they explained why they used a larger ratio.
It makes the marble stuff, but it's barely fit. They said it's to make it more flexible.
So he made it on the money.
Tried to make a new plot. They were inspired by the other Islam or Islam, but they tried to make their own plot to help the people of their country.
So then later, Harry did a presentation on Bitcoins, Forever the Entertainer, of course. And those are the companies that accept the Bitcoins. I found that very surprising. It's nice to have an audience when they're presenting. It's, I think they've grown a lot as far as having an audience and presenting in front of those people. The other day, Christine couldn't be quiet during the assembly. She just kept going and going, whereas she was quite reserved before. And then Celine did cryptology, which was something that she'd seen before, but she wanted to understand it better. And I think she learned a lot from that presentation as to what more she needs to include in a presentation for people to understand what's happening. The students have their own blog on Moonshooters, and so they're supposed to be keeping that updated. I still need to push them for that because they're supposed to be demonstrating, showing all the learning that they're doing. They're on the blog. There's bits and pieces up there, but they're still learning on how to put it together comfortably. It takes a little while to get used to a blog and navigating the blog. And then Twitter, they're supposed to all be following me on Twitter. There's the address if you want math questions thrown at you every now and then. And these are the things that we use to get them started. We've got the fifth gear. There's the whole thing. I just cut bits and pieces, but if you want to see the whole thing, it's pretty fascinating. And then moonshots, which is another video to give them some ideas as to what they're going to be doing for their practice moonshots. No, they don't have to invent something new, but they can take something that was invented and look at it through that mathematical lens. Questions?
You said that the students have grown in different ways though. How have they grown?
I see a lot more confidence in themselves, and I also see that they're starting to see mathematical connections where they might not have seen it before, which is the whole goal.
So do you think when they go on their travels, they see something, they're thinking more of the math rather than it's a tree?
I'm hoping that I get a tweet from them with a math question. That would be ideal. I know that sounds kind of weird, but that would be ideal, is to get something back from a student like that, because then you know that they make the connection. So, and they're going to give me more information. They're writing to me about what they've learned within the realm of things, whether it's math or not. Jung Ho was saying today that the idea between mathematics and the reality so important to him that he's glad to finally be seeing those connections.
My head of department in my school, okay, hypothetically, I'm going to think so. Okay. So I'm going to, let's say, a different school totally, okay. So if, I can't convince them about this. How can I go about, because I can see the connections here and how important it is. How might I go about trying to get my school to look at this, and how perhaps trying to get this into the curriculum?
You have to have admin that's going to support you. You have to. I really don't think you can do some things on your own, like within the classroom, but to really explore it, like last year I could take my kids out and do the garden and measure the field and stuff like that, but I still was stuck to a curriculum. You need to have someone let you throw the curriculum out, give them just a small framework and put it together. It's scary. I didn't know what parents were going to say. But the last parent-teacher conferences, I had a parent come up to me who wants his child to be in the class. So, Celine's mom was like, I wish we'd done this in school. Instead, I moved on ahead. I'd rather have done this. But the connections are really important. If you don't have the connection, it's pointless.
So how do, if you're in a typical NYP class, though, let's say grade 9 class, and you're not in this elite, and how would you evidence this? Would you be able to evidence this in a way that would satisfy the NYP criteria that I
The NYP has a checklist of things that have to be done at the moment. So that's still curriculum driven, right? So it's still syllabus driven. The opportunity we have right now, and it's a way to start, is these kids have already finished the NYP curriculum. And rather than push them ahead, which we so often do, we're letting them explore. Ideally, it would be nice if we get rid of grades and that kind of stuff, and kids can just explore step by step and move according to their explorations. Fantastic. That would be ideal. But right now we're bound by grade levels, schedule, rooms, black rooms, and they're on. Anybody else?
I've got more.
He always has a lot of questions. It's okay though.
So if you were to, what lessons would you've learnt this year that you might take into next year if you were continuing this course?
It's okay to let kids flounder and flail a little bit. I think the first presentation, we had one presentation that was really, really strong, and the other ones were having a hard time getting going. But that first one was so strong that I think she really set the pace for everyone else, and everyone else came up to that level. If we'd had 4 bummer presentations, I don't know. But if someone is like doing if you have a good example, it's absolutely fantastic.
My question is not mathematical. What is tube mouse? I still don't know.
It's a mouse that you find down in the subway system. The subway is sometimes called the tube. So it's a mouse that, if I said underground, that wouldn't make sense. Yes, one of my students thought it was a mouse that had 5 tubes. You find 5 tube mice. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Bryson, do you have a question? I see the.
No, I know. I'm trying to figure out. So this was with kind of the high flyers. But do you think this could be recreated for with a little bit more structure for the kids who struggle in math to keep them more interested in it? Because what I'm starting to realize, what I've realized is that a lot of students we think are disinterested or unmotivated in school in general or in a specific subject are really just not engaged because they're not interested in or they haven't made those connections. So
I think that it does work, but it's going to take patience, and we have to get rid of some boundaries.
Yeah.
As long as we have these boundaries where we're classifying kids and saying that, that I'm fortunate, I've got students who have finished the grade 10 curriculum, so I have an opportunity to do this.
Right.
Could I do it with 5 students who are possibly not as motivated? I think so, but it would take a lot more time on my part to find something. I think you need structure in the beginning to get them hooked.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a great time with that roller coaster. The more and more that at first they were kind of like, I can't get this. But once they started understanding and realized that they could understand it, that was a start. And there's still a partial structure in there. But I think maybe some of the students who we say aren't that good at math, maybe it's the structure that has made them or put them in that position.
Right.
But
And I think this is kind of blowing that structure out of the water for the high flyers, and then I think general population who's
I think the general population could do it and probably do just as good of a job, but we just have to be more patient and figure out how to get them moving in that direction.
Right.
But I do think it's possible.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think that might lead them into studying math a little further and understanding some of those concepts that they just let go by the wayside.
Sparking their curiosity.
Yeah.
Terie, how long is the presentation at CISA? Do you know how long you
An hour,
An hour.
45 minutes now.
So you could actually show one of the full moonshots from the recent one, like the Bitcoin and Salone's one, for example, because they were particularly interesting. And,
Yeah,
and
I just
the
don't.
Q&A and
I could. It's just the editing part. I would have to edit it down, which I could do, but I could easily take some bits and pieces from those and show that, and I'd like to. It's just
I'd get the kids to do it.
I tried. I tried, and all I got was the one thing.
Like, what
I know ahead of technology that sounds like a great idea. We could,
So good.
Yeah, I could do it. I could easily go through it.
Because I
But
think-
my problem is
You know
I'm
what, I
so
think-
new to iMovie. I'm just.
I've got a feeling that if they saw some of those presentations, okay, that would they would ask for those presentations to add weight to to the admin whatever.
I would want to show the whole thing.
No,
the
no,
bits
I
and
do bits and
pieces.
pieces because I think they will go back and excited about the possibility of having a class that can do this kind of thing. But of course, I wish Jane was here. She would probably agree that it's very difficult to say, okay, to justify a group of 5 kids with a teacher, and
What you do
with the
little
budget
paper?
constraints that you have. For this would
No, I agree. I'll try to do this tomorrow. But I'm gonna need some help.
yeah.
how long are the presentations that the kids have done? Do you have to write
When
it
you
down?
watch it,
When you watch it, they're fantastic. So,
you could agree with that. Then.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they were great presentation.
just let me get rid of this thing.
They were not just.
How do
I mean, because
Where's
math
my-
aside, I mean, these weren't too math involved. These recent ones that were put up. So
Why not have one playing when people are coming in? So
Yeah.
you
Where
can
are
sit
my
down and
little
watch it.
dots to get rid of this thing?
Oh,
No, the
that's
red,
like-
green, yellow thing.
Oh,
Zero.
drag up in the middle.
Yeah, turn that thingy off.
Yeah.
I can't move it. It's stuck. So tempted to take my PC. See?
Is there a password for the computer?
Yeah, it's Riker. R-I-K-E-R.
Somebody's a tricky.